Good morning. I don't know what I want to talk about. I literally don't have my thoughts together. So, we're going to see how well this pray before the video thing is working out. Because I don't know. I just want to get this video out of the way um, before I have do some other stuff that is probably going to take up a lot of my day. Lord bless this video. Help me to say what you need me to say and help me to recall the things that I want to say and convey. Yeah, just help me. Help me, Jesus. Help me. Amen. Okay, yeah, the last video I made, which is just about like serve God, um, because you should. Um, Yeah, I've been really like thinking about just everything related to that. I kept reading. I think I'm on. I forget which minor prophet I'm on. I'm like I was gonna like rush through, not rush through, but just like plow through the last. I think I'm like got 4 books left, and then I would have been done with the Old Testament, like from Samuel at least. I hadn't started from the beginning, but all those the other ones I've read recently. I haven't read like any of these in a really long time, um So yeah, I think Joel was the last one that I had read. No. I read Amos. Um, yeah, Amos actually was like, "Whoa, this thing is a doozy." Yeah, the minor prophets. It's really interesting theme with the minor prophets because I don't know if it's just because they're called the minor prophets because they're like short books, obviously, and so I guess the attitude is that there's not that much to study with them because it's not the major prophets because it gives you the impression that like the major prophets were like more on the scene or something than the minor prophets. Like that's what I think of when I hear that. And I didn't really get the indication. Like if you were to ask me, I would say Elijah was a major prophet or Elisha was a major prophet, but they don't have their own books. Um, probably because it's a lot older in the timeline, but or they didn't write anything down, whatever. They were in the narrative, and you didn't really see Isaiah in the narrative. Um, unless it was like from his own perspective. Same thing with Jeremiah, but they were in exile by that time. But the context is really intriguing me. I'm a really big context person, but man, the minor prophets, I don't know if it's because they just had one major thing to say, one thing to focus on, but wow, like because it's all about what God is saying. So if you want to know what God is saying, if you want to know God's true feelings, you want to know like what God feels about a way about those minor prophets, dude. Amos was killing me, and like I forgot, and then just powerfully, it is now emblazoned on my mind that Amos wasn't even called to be a prophet. It doesn't he just like the book doesn't start with, and this is how I was called to do blah blah blah. Um, like Isaiah does and Ezekiel does and Jeremiah. There's like the way that they were called, and Amos just goes straight into it. Most of the minor prophets do, and Micah is another one, but he went and told the king, or I'm pretty sure it was the king, told him some nasty information. And uh, the king is like offended or whatever. And he's like, well, listen, I didn't come from prophets. My daddy wasn't a prophet. He was like, I was a shepherd. You understand? I was a shepherd. And I love it because it was like, I was a shepherd and I also had like, some olive trees, you know what I'm saying? Like he like said his whole like business or whatever. He was like, and God called me from doing that. And now I'm here talking to you. So like to me, that conveyed like where his style came from, because it's like I don't even know how to like make this flowery or anything for you. Like this ain't even my business. Like God just called me and told me to come here and tell you this stuff. Like, so I think that's hilarious. I think it's hilarious that God called some random person and like didn't make like he does that all the time, but there's usually like some big like story like in relation to it, It's like theatrical. No, he's just Amos, old Amos, just on his farm or whatever. He's like, I got a message. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so but through that, because even when I was saying my video about worship God and like what else are you going to do literally, I was still like processing myself the things that I was reading, not for me because I get it, but I'm just like it's like I still want to swim in this and understand like the way God is, and just be like, I know that there's some blind spots there and stuff. Like that's the best explanation I can come up with in the moment. But it's a bit like when you have a conversation with somebody or you have an argument with somebody and then you remember later on like what you could have said. It's like, I should have said that. I know there's some blind spots about the way that we view God that we just take for granted because of whatever. So, I'm just like, I know that there's an ultimate explanation out there that's like super simple and succinct and right, that can be put in pill form and given to people forcibly. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to think of the way to encapsulate it. And so going through the minor prophets and seeing more of like the things that God was bringing up to people, and just really trying to understand the state of Israel at the time, which really is just bringing me more and more back to America. It's very, very similar. And I don't think that there's like some spiritual like juju going on. I just think it's the nature. It's just like when you see the rise and fall of a corporation, like, which is really strange because I just watched this thing about Shoney's. Like, I forget there's like a series on YouTube that does it. It's like Abandoned, and they do all of these things on like these really profitable businesses. You're like, yeah, whatever happened to that? So I randomly just watched that like just now, and then I got on this thing, and I kind of was thinking about it a little bit just listening to it, because um, I kind of was like, yeah, what did happen, Shoney's? Like, it's kind of a mystery to you when you're just a person and you're just like, that's a perfectly good restaurant. What's going on? What are y'all doing? And sometimes you go, yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. Like, that wasn't long for this world. Even if you say, okay, yeah, all the Shoney's are trash or the quality went down, it's like, okay, we'll bring the quality back up, fire the people that are bringing it down and bring it back up and have a restaurant. Like, I don't understand what's going on. So, as far as that, it didn't really explain. It did talk about like there was a lawsuit in like 89, which I totally forgot about, but I do remember how Shoney's had this like got this reputation of being racist. And there was a lawsuit in 1989 and they had to settle out of court, which means they didn't have enough to win. They typically don't, but it's just a bad look when you have a lawsuit about something like racism or some, big whatever, and then you have to settle. It's like, but anyway, so I do remember that, but I didn't pay too much attention to that. Most people didn't. Even if the people did, they still went to Shoney's if they needed to eat food. So, but the thing that I found fascinating was like as it was declining, and it got bought, you know, by other companies, and at one point they were able to buy it like at its peak it was making like almost $1 billion or something out of like a certain amount of locations throughout the whole United States. Like at its height, it was like making lots and lots of money. And then at its lowest point, the shares went down or whatever. And the next company that bought it for $20 million. $20 million. They bought Shoney's. Basically, it came out to 33 cents a share. And I just thought that was so fascinating. And then listening to the whole thing, and then they sold it to, they had like Shoney's had like a couple other subsidiaries it owned, like a couple other things. Like I think it owned Captain D's at one point, which I did not know. And then it went to someone else, and like literally it went to like a private person who bought it for probably even less than that. I don't know. And then they tried to revitalize it. And I just realized like, wow, these people, they're doing more than but like buying. When you buy something like Shoney's, it's like you get that name, and that name is what you're really buying. Like, and then if you can do any better with that brand than has been done in the past, you got yourself a business. It's like um just really interesting. So it's not even the same thing as the person who started Shoney's was the workhorse. Obviously, he owned a restaurant. He bought a restaurant. He made that restaurant successful. You bought a name, and now you like that is what's going to make you money, and all you got to do is keep that thing afloat, keep it from whatevering, which no one can seem to do. I did think it was kind of dumb, like the very first people who bought it, like they shut down like a bunch of locations, and I was like, yeah, I can guess when that was, because all of the Shoney's were closed, but they were still there. Like that is in and of itself is the dumbest decision. Like I would like I'm the type of person no one would listen to me in a meeting, because it's like what's your degree in, ma'am? Like what are you talking about? But I'd be like, listen, if I'm buying Shoney's, the last thing I want to do is just like close down like 60% of them, and then also leave them there, because that's mentally going to put in people's minds that Shoney's is the bad ghost place that shuts down when you're driving to it, and then you go and you're like, I don't even think this place is open. Like, why would you shut down that many? Like, that's crazy all at one time. Like, it just is going to put a thing in people's minds that it's just not even open, even when it's like when you put your brand new one up, like that's newly refurbished or whatever. It's like you're just gonna like all the lights are on, people in the parking lot. You're gonna be like, because you just like, why would you put yourself with that association? Like you just inadvertently associated your company with being closed all the time and collecting dust and not being open and just being shabby. Like that was like the weirdest thing I ever heard. I was like, why would you do that? I could have told you as soon as you were in the meeting and it suggested it, I would have raised my hand and I'd have been like, hey, maybe not close that many. Like, and then it's like, why buy it if you're going to close like over half of them down across the country? Like, that's so weird. I mean, I know you bought it for pennies on the dollar, but it's like, anyway. So I don't know why I went into that whole rant, except for just thinking about, oh yeah, about like countries, and like obviously there's differences in the way that humans rise and fall to like corporations. But what I'm saying is like you start off as like, you know, the little guy, and then you rise to your zenith, and then you get prideful, and uh there's corruption and all of these things, and then you get like this, then it starts to decline, but it's like, oh, but we'll bounce back, it's fine. And then you just get like delulu, and then you start you say, hey, why don't we just take the dollar off the gold standard? Like, we don't need that. And then you do that, and then everything's like super cheap. You're like, oh, we made a great decision. And then 40 years later, like biscuits cost $50. So this is when it's like very similar in the death of a nation. Not so much because God is in charge. It's like you have to, I think, ultimately this whole life, like, it counts for something, but not what we think it counts for. And basically, how far can you get with God before it gets too much, before he's blessing you too much, before, you obey God, he rewards you. 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 Now you got plenty rewards. And now you're like, well, it was mostly me though. How far? And he's like, none of this is like bothering his like space in the universe. So he's not going, well, let me not reward him because he might get a swelled head and it might go, haywire. It's like, no, he's going to keep the system how it is. It's like sowing and reaping is not going to go be different just because you need to just sow a little bit less this time. You need to reap a little bit less. It's like, no, you could be a terrible person, but you sow so rightly, you're going to reap rightly. And if you get the wrong impression about your life from that, then God, you're going to have to learn about it later. God is going to like review all of this with you later. So, it's like, that's what I see happening. And another thing that I was noticing is like, the way that he would, I mean, I really should have probably showed you these scriptures, but, maybe go read it. You know what I'm saying? Like, go read it so you can know what we're talking about. It's like you're at a book club and you haven't read the book. When you look specifically in the Minor Prophets about the gripes that he had, because the things like Ezekiel and Jeremiah and Isaiah is very big picture. It's very tied in with the actual things that are actually happening, because what God said he was going to happen to them did happen to them. And so, but in the prophets, the Minor Prophets is just his sort of dialogue about what he wants to say. And it's all about not taking care of the poor, not even just not taking care of them. It was like, I saw on several occasions where it was like, you sell the poor for a pair of sandals or something. Like, it was like you sell your whatever into slavery, and you sell the poor people for a pair of sandals. It was just like, okay, so I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think that was actually happening. I don't think that was God just saying hyperbole things. And none of it was like allegorical. He wasn't doing like this allegory about two wives and none of this stuff. It was like, this is what's going on with y'all. So it was like, oh, so y'all are really terrible. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, you abandoned me and you're worshiping these other gods. It's like that. It wasn't just like you stopped doing that. It was like, and you're terrible, like on top of it. And I don't know if it's because of, in addition to, I mean, I think I think the theory overall, or the general idea, is that abandoning God causes you to sort of like lose your mind a little bit. You start not having peace and all of these things that you had natural access to, and now you're having to go outside to go get those things, and it's just causing this, whatever. So generally, yes, you abandon God, you're gonna go off the rails, because you need God, but at the same time, the nations around them I mean, it was pointed out multiple times that the nations around them weren't as bad as they were and did not know God. So I don't know, but it also kind of um, foreshadows, the plan to go outside of Israel to all the entire world, um, because there were people out there. I mean, almost every sort of anecdote is about, in the Old Testament is about them going to another land, and this other person who's not an Israelite seeing miracles. Um, and the Israelites that do see miracles, it's because they're bringing about a plan of God. So it's like all of the stories that are about the Jews are about like the thing, it's Abraham, and it's Samuel's mom, it's David's whatever, it's great grandparents or whatever. Those are the stories about the Israelites. And then the people that have miracles done for them are like just randos from other lands. Like not all the time, but it's just a pattern that I was noticing. And just generally speaking, like God, what God is doing, particularly within the narrative of the Bible. I don't know if this is true across everybody. If I stop to think about it for a longer time, it might be true that this is what he's doing for everybody. Um, he's doing this if he is doing this for everybody, it's just because of the context of this planet and the state that it's in right now. I don't think that um, this is just what he likes to do all the time. I think it's because of the God of this world and all this stuff happening. He created the Jewish nation using one man. Just he's constantly using things that simply absolutely cannot be used, or have no value without him. It's not so much that they are lowly and humble. I mean that, yes, but yes, like that stands to reason. But like if you have like a rusted out, I don't know, like using a rusted out wagon, when that rusted out wagon like is able to like create a city, like you cannot give that rusted out wagon the credit for that. It's impossible. You can't. So he is always using one guy in a random part of the world, um, that is not connected to anything that would give him an advantage. That person becomes a people that of the same thing, just one random people that no connection, and I think that's part of the rules that he gives them. And it's like, don't work on Sunday. It's like you are not he's cutting off of their ability to do anything that would give them a typical human advantage. You're all slaves. You're going to be slaves for generations. And now you're going to overthrow the largest, the most influential nation, country. You're just gonna they're just gonna be leveled to the point where you're literally gonna be able to just grab what you need from them and go. You're gonna be like, can I just have this gold and silver, please? Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna just go. I'm gonna take that. Bye. And you're just gonna walk out. Like that, they can't, that's not possible without God. Then they get to a desert and they survive for 40 years because you can't do that without God. Then they beat giants. They take over the giants' land. And because you cannot do that without God. Then he says, okay, you're literally not going to work on this day. You're going to worship. Here's, follow these things to do the worship. You're not going to, I mean, he might as well told them, like, you're not going to learn how to use any weapons. You're just going to, like, make tortillas or whatever. Because the point is, because then they win victories. And then it's like, how? How? They worship the God of the universe. And then that spreads the information. It's like he's doing this organic grassroots thing. And it's clearly for the benefit of the way that this world is operating. Now, if you want to see that as, oh, God created bullies and these bullies are going around ruining people's workforce and taking land, it's like, I can't help you if you want to see it like that. I can't help you if you want to think that the Israelites are just dirty revolters who ruined Egypt and made it, whatever. It's like, that's not even the point. The whole point is so that you understand that God is real and exists and worship him. And he's not going to force you, because he could show up with the whole shebang. He's not going to do that. You're going to see his attributes, and you're going to see his nature and what he's like, and you're going to make a decision. That's what he wants you to do. So, so that's what he's doing. And then so much of the Israelites, it's more than just about the covenant that they made with him in the wilderness. He made a covenant with Abraham. He made a covenant with Isaac. Like, he made a covenant with the people that came before them, that he would do this, and he would. And even if you don't value it and you go, well, no one asked him to do that. It's like that happened before you were even born. You don't have a choice. You have to sort of be under his protection and in his service. Like, and you don't want that anymore, because I mean, I think that is a modern reading, which you can't help do. I mean, eventually you got to be influenced by your own time. But the reality is they were, the population wanted to serve idols, and they were like, I mean, they were obsessed. Like, they really, it was a lot of idol worship, like, for decades that became centuries. Like, I already talked about the male prostitutes, like, and we all know the male prostitutes weren't there for women. It wasn't so women can get a break. Okay. The male prostitutes were probably transes as well. And, they were a fixture. Could nobody get rid of them, the male prostitutes. So, the pole, the Asherah poles occasionally came down depending on who was king, but then they went right back up. I felt really bad, like, because, I think we all know how bad Molech is, and Baal. Baal was a big one. I think Ahab and Jezebel were the ones that introduced the Baal worship. And then Jehu, like, got rid of it all, which, I talked about that a little bit. And then I forget who it was. I think it was Manasseh in Judah. So the Judah kings are typically not as bad. And he reintroduced it. I'm just like, man, that's terrible. I mean, it was like hundreds of years apart, probably, or 100 or so ish. But he reintroduced it and just brought it all back. And it was like, dude. So, I don't, I'm really just trying to, like, think it through, understand the context, understand, like, what I'm missing. Like, another thing is too, like, pretty much any system that you're a part of is going to have this basic set of rules as far as, like, what you have to do. And a lot of people don't think of themselves as worshiping anything or being a part of anything. They really think that they're some independent whatever, but the reality is they live underneath the umbrella of something. Um, they have to be able to have the assurance to walk away from God and feel like they'll be fine. Like, what exactly are you, even if it is you. And I was thinking randomly today too about uh Satan, and I was like, you know what if he's thinking that the things of God, like any, like, oh, I'm gonna just steal, if I anybody who has the things of God can be God. Like, what if he's just thinking like, oh, anybody with access to this stuff can be like God. And so he's just like taking everything. It's not so much that he's trying to mimic it or whatever. It's like, well, I can, like, yeah, if I had this and that, I could be God too. Anybody could be God with this stuff. And so he's taking the things that are in heaven for himself, using them to be a God in his own right. The idea being like, I mean, he's not, it's working, but I don't know. I just feel like within like 30 seconds, I would be like, yeah, but you're like, the person who actually created that stuff is the person who will always be more higher than you. And I think that God is letting him do all of this stuff. I mean, y'all, people just think it's absolutely crazy that any of this is happening. Like, why is God letting the devil do these things? You know, if all of this is true, because all you're thinking about is like, I'm just trying to get the new iPhone. Like, why? Like, what does this have to do? Like, why is he letting him just run amok and let bad things happen? You think this is about keeping stability, and I understand why you can think that, because that does take up a lot of our life, because we live in a time period in a country, particularly the time period. I don't think we're really focusing on how lawless everything is. No one should have to worry about all of this stuff that we're worried about. Like, you shouldn't have to worry about people doing flash mobs of robbery and uh, economies failing and people not having jobs. Like, at the same time, like, we should not be having to do all of this stuff. You know, the border being overrun by just not women and children, just men of military age, just like coming through the border. Like, none of this is normal, natural. Like, I know the sun is shining, and you know the gas is there. You know, gas prices are fine right now for the most part. It probably shouldn't even be as high as it is. You know, everything is like been put on this conveyor belt of crazy so that you don't notice how like crazy it is. And so when you hear the news that like, oh, well, the devil is the one that's caught like being, it's like, well, why is God allowing that? You know, it's like you can't hold the politicians accountable. You can't hold your family accountable anymore for stuff because you'll get in trouble. You can't hold anybody accountable anymore. So you just, God is the only one left, kind of, to be like, why are you letting him run rampant? Why would you even let this stuff go on? But it's like, um, there's nothing else to do but this. Like, God, there's nothing else to do but this. And he's already thought it out. Like, I could just, I understand. It's like, it's gonna wrap up. It's not gonna do it forever. And I mean, his conception of how long a time period is, it's just like, just let him cook. Like the kids say nowadays, just like let him cook. He knows what he's doing. Stay with him. Like, you and your, like, when everything can just abruptly come to an end. Like, we're just trying to live our little lives and stuff. And just the way that he's able to or the way that things are, there's these little things, and you think, well, in the whole scheme of stuff, like, your little life doesn't matter. It's like, yes and no. It's like, he can do it all. He can have it all matter. It's like those, back in the day when the TV shows, the seasons used to be like 36 episodes. You know what I'm saying? Or like, like, I got the kids watching Twilight Zone, and they're like episode one, season one. Like, you can't just go through like all of the best episodes. It's like, no, we got to start from the beginning. So they are literally watching the Twilight Zone. Like, we were watching it like every night, and that thing got 36 episodes in one season. I'm like, y'all will be grown by the time we finish this show. I'm like, man, back in the day, they was making content, boy. That was like their whole job. They were like, yeah, what else are you gonna do but make shows? Like, that's 30. If that happens once a week, that's like almost a show every week. There's 52 weeks in a year, and you done made a show for 36 of the weeks. That's insane. Like, it's 8 episodes and they're out now. That's the season. They're on vacation. So when you have 36 episodes of story to tell, all that, you can't just do the big stuff. You got to have the little small things, little small victories, and here and there. It's like, there's a lot of story to tell. There's time for your little bitty life and the devil being thrown in the lake of fire. Like, it's all going to get covered. It's all getting covered. So, it's all happening all at once. He's just getting it all tangled up. And I don't know, maybe I'll do another video on like the rapture sign, because it's literally there's literally updates about it. Like, you would think that it's like, oh my gosh, the sign in the sky that John saw in Revelation 12, it's in the sky, and that's like the end of the story. No, there's stuff happening, man. There's a comet coming through that could be it's got a tail, you know what I'm saying? And that could be the thing that's gonna you know hit like a third of the stars or whatever, and they come out of the sky. Who knows? We literally need updates about it. There's a comet or a star, I think, that's going to show up. It might be a comet. No, I think it's a star. I don't think comets. I think comets only move, right? I don't know. It literally blew my mind, because there's a star that, like, I don't know if you know anything about these these programs where you can put the stars, you can see what the sky looks like, and you can track, each individual star and see where it moves in the sky or whatever. Well, there's a star, and I forget what it's named. It's very important, but I've forgotten, and I'm just randomly telling you the story. Um, and it's like, for now, like right now, it's like in a certain part of the sky, it's coming towards the Revelation 12 sign. But the way that it's coming toward, like, it's like, I think even now it's not really moving that fast. And then you can fast forward through time and to see where it is. So, or where it's going to end up. And you can see that it's like, it'll show like it's there. It's like here, here, here. And then it just zooms past, like doing nothing for like a week. And then in 3 days, it zooms down through the sign. And you're like, whoa, what is that? And it means like the king is coming or something. Like, it's so crazy. It's so crazy. And it zooms into it. It goes super fast. And then it goes down to this random spot, and then it does not move. Literally ever again. Like, he sped it up through the days, and you see how fast it moves. And then he sped it up through the years, and it just stayed in that one spot for years. So I was like, this thing is blowing my mind. Like, And if you don't get that, I understand. Like, I don't even know. I haven't even been sending it to people because I'm just like, if they don't understand, like, if they can't see this, what's going on, if they're not sensing this, like, I don't think this star thing is going to get them excited. Like, I just don't know what to do. I know I'm supposed to be sounding alarms and whatnot, but it's like, how do you sound an alarm for people who can't even, who didn't hear the first alarm? Like, that was louder. I don't know. It's just weird. It's like, I have a really hard time like getting jazzed up about like, we need to tell everybody. I'm like, they're not even, they don't care. Like, good luck with that. But anyway, I don't know. But you know, I do what I can. I'm doing these videos, right? I mean, that's supposed to be doing something. But yeah. So that was just my general. This is my general thoughts on things so far. I'm gonna finish the rest of the minor prophets and see what other patterns I can find. You know, aside from you know seeing the end times things and the things that haven't happened yet and whatnot, and just thinking about that whole thing is just like so fascinating. It's just like, okay, what hasn't happened yet? And unless you think that there's literally going to be like 1,000 years between one sign and then the next one, which is just like, why would it be like that? Um, it's like, yeah, there's only a couple things left that haven't been checked off, and some of those things don't need to be. We don't need to be here for them to be checked off. So it could be even sooner than soon. So yeah, I gotta make more videos because I like all of the stuff that we've been finding. You know, my husband is now starting to, because he started going through the minor prophets like independent of me. So now he's reading it and he's like, I'm seeing a lot of end time stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So just a lot of parallels with things, and um, just noticing. It's like the idea that we could have been reading about it this entire time and not knowing, and just reading about ourselves this entire time and not knowing, which is entirely possible. I'm just thinking like, wow, like let's really like think about that for a second. You know, all of this about second born sons having the promise and it not being the first one but the second one. I mean, Abraham did it. Isaac did it with Jacob and Esau. Jacob did it with, you know, Joseph being, you know, the youngest. And all of these things about, you know, Saul being the first king and he was rejected, and then David being the second, you know, Cain and Abel. I mean, it's just this whole thing of the younger son when it's typically the older son that is supposed to get the promise. And then it's like, are we the younger son? Are we the like, is this about the Gentiles? Like, that would be sick, dude. I mean, it's one of those things that you don't know until the picture is complete, but it's just like you see it being filled in, you're like, "Oh my god, is that going to be what I think it's going to be?" Like, what? Yeah, so anyway, I guess I really did just talk about it. But anyway, I'm going to stop here cuz I'm way over. Thanks, bye.